sometimes thoughts are very quiet and in the background, sometimes they're in the foreground. So what you're describing is just very natural. There's nothing you need to do about that. And you will notice, though, that there will be periods where it's very quiet and you'll still hear the whispers of thoughts, but that shouldn't necessarily be evaluated as better. It's just what happens. And the tendency will be then, okay, well, I want to get back to that really quiet place. And pretty soon there's greed in the mind, and that produces tension. I'll just say it from the beginning. Well, I guess it's not the beginning. It's already the second day. But if you, at any time during your practice, if your mind settles and becomes quite quiet, that quietness, by nature, everything will relax. And when your mind relaxes, it opens. And when your mind opens, it functions as a vacuum. And what happens next? Mind gets busy again. So it's always like this. It's always like this. And so, in fact, today, if your mind is even busier, it's more likely a sign that your practice is deepening. Better not to evaluate it at all. As the Dalai Lama suggested, you shouldn't even evaluate except over maybe 10 or 20 years. But in the short run, you'll see a lot of hills and valleys, and that's how it goes. It goes from cycles of purification to purity, followed by purification. And that's why the emphasis is not on strictly purity of mind, quietness of mind. That's nice when it happens. But the emphasis is much more on balance, on equanimity, on composure with things just the way they are, learning how to have equanimity. When it's really busy, oh, this is what busy is like. When it's quiet, oh, this is what quiet is like. And have our mind not be disturbed by either disturbed by grasping or disturbed by aversion. A little warning, please.
I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about the scientific aspect of meditation, because I know that the Dalai Lama invited a scientist to study Tibetan monks, and they found that the part of their brain that has to do with feelings of well-being was actually much more active in these Tibetan monks who meditated than in people who didn't. And it's quite an old study that they did, but I thought that was quite fascinating.
Yes, I think you gave all the information that's needed about that right now. And I'd really like us to, I totally appreciate that, and I think you actually maybe inspired a few people by bringing that into the room. But I'd like us to mostly just look at what our own mind is doing. And that's how we really resolve the practice. It's nice to have the support of knowing that there's neurological impact, and there's so much work about it now. There's the Buddha's Brain, some people that teach a lot at Spirit Rock, my home center. Book called Buddha's Brain. Read that. You'll learn a lot about the effect on the brain. And Dan Siegel's work called the Mindful Brain or something like that. Andrew Newberg. I don't know who Andrew Newberg. Dina? Please, you can go on. We can move on. You have to speak up a little more.
I had the experience in this particular sit of a conflict coming to mind in a way, and it's basically something that I'm avoiding in my life.
Yes.
And I sat with that. I just thought of that person, and what was really amazing is that as I thought of them, like just waves of emotions came over me.
Yes. Yeah, I can still feel it's present with us here now.
Yeah, and it was really beautiful, because as I went and as I felt all the different emotions, it just kind of seemed like it dissolved. Like the knot, it was really funny at that exact moment that I was feeling it. Like you were saying, you started to speak and say, how are you feeling? Like, is there knots? I think you actually said the word knot.
Oh, tension, right.
And
Yeah.
I was really feeling it. And as I, I was feeling
Do,
it,
do, do, do.
sitting down and to the point where I could think, I could have the image of the person in my mind, and all of the tense sort of like darkness that I was feeling originally had kind of shifted more towards like loving forgiveness.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was like,
Yes.
it was so sweet. So I just,
Lovely. Yeah, these kinds of unbinding, unwinding will happen naturally. It's ideal, though, if it isn't ideal to intentionally think about someone. But if it insists itself upon your mind, then to let that percolate. And sometimes it will come in the form of strong waves of emotion. Sometimes you'll get the discharge in the terms of the pictures, the memories. And often that's just your heart relaxing, and things kind of clarify themselves. But we don't intentionally try to solve any issues on the retreat. We just notice what's there, what emerges naturally. Otherwise, we're going from one issue to another, and it's endless. That's what we call samsara. And so we don't use our practice to get to the bottom of anything except the nature of of what's common to all those experiences of conflict, what binds us in every situation, what helps us be free. And what it sounds like in your case is what allows you to be free is to let those feelings emerge. Let that whole situation arise in your mind, give it space, and you saw that it began to just naturally liberate itself, which it does. Please, you had your hand up.
You answered my question.
and it's interesting what you said about freedom, and towards the end of the meditation, it's exactly what was coming up, which is the word freedom, I'm free.
I'm free. It's your natural state. Thank you. Now, if you still feel the impulse to cry, and just cry your eyes out. Just let your heart breathe. But don't go looking for it. Please.
It was very interesting to very on my leg were really in pain, to examine what you were saying about the nature of the relationship between pain and suffering.
Yes.
It was interesting.
Examining the relationship between pain and suffering.
But when tired.
And what happened when you examined that
It
relationship?
was very interesting. The pain lessened.
Pain lessened.
Pain lessened. Maybe not so much lessened, but just, allowed myself to touch more.
Maybe a little less reactive to it. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, there's an old Buddhist school called the mind-only school that posited that all pain is our mental reaction. I'm not so absolute, but it is interesting to pay attention to our attitude toward pain, our reaction. And once you attend to that attitude, and if the attitude softens, you'll notice that the pain often will not be as intense. But I think there's some kind of middle place there, but our attitude, our reaction, the way we're relating to pain plays a huge part in how persistent pain is. Please.
One thing I'm kind of turning over a lot in my mind since yesterday and after the Dharma talk in the afternoon is what I see as kind of a paradox. You can observe things just where they are, you just where you are, and see everything as experiences. What is your motivation to want to change things? You want to change things in your life?
What's your motivation to want to change things if you're just seeing things the way they are? Well,
Or do you have to get that right?
see, often our motivation to change things is kind of ego-driven. We want something, or we want to get rid of something because it's either something's pleasant and we want more of it, unpleasant and we want to get rid of it. And that's actually, that motivation to get rid of and have more of is often, it's often just driven by greed in the mind, and it's often driven by a sense of wanting to, thinking that we'll be better if we have. So that motivation to change things often adds to our suffering. So when you ultimately see things the way they are, even see your motivation for the way it is, clarify your motivation, then out of clarity, our motivation usually naturally shifts toward toward being a benefit, altruism, love, compassion, more sensitivity to the impact of whatever we do on others. And then our actions just tend to be less harmful to ourselves and to other people. But we are all we're active beings, and we're creative beings, and we are passionate beings. But our passion often gets very bound up in a very narrow little world of me, and we often lose our sense of connection to our environment around us. And so it's not as though when you see things the way they are, you will become this passive blob.
That was kind of the scary part.
And that's the scary part. Scary parts are always our projection of what it may mean about the future. It's never about what's actually happening. You want to see, is it really scary to be with things as they are? Does your life stop functioning in real time? Of course not. You still got to put food on the table. You still need love, need to give love, all those things. And that will just be enhanced. I often say that if you can learn to be with things as they are, your functioning will be 200% better, with much more ease and facility, much more clarity. But we don't trust that because we think that we're so busy trying to get somewhere. I hope so. It's one of those tough questions, but I really appreciate that you even thought of it as, how do we reconcile these things of being with things as they are and then being active and productive and see, if you're clear and you see someone perpetrating suffering, you're not going to just stay there as a blob of seeing things as they are. You're going to immediately leap to some kind of compassionate response. That's what happens when we're clear. When we're unclear, we're just going to spin in our self-interest, and we may not even notice there's a need around us. Pleasure. So last one, and then.
I'm wondering if you can speak a bit to, not sure how to describe it exactly, it's kind of spacing out.
Yes, spacing out. That's very common.
It's not the same as like getting sleepy.
It's not sleepy. Is it without thought or with thought?
Without thought.
Without thought, kind of going into quiet spaces, but with not much awareness, right?
Yeah, like I had a moment this morning in the sit where I heard someone move, and I thought I was still in bed.
That's sleep. That's inclining towards sleep.
Where am I kind of a moment?
Yeah, that's the where am I kind of moments usually means we're inclining towards sleep. And we're either in some kind of dream-like state, hypnagogic state, somewhere between waking and sleeping. You're obviously still sitting, so you're not exactly sleeping, although we can sleep upright. I've done it many times. People have tapped me on my shoulder as they saw drool coming down. But that's usually a suggestion that you have some good tranquility, but not a lot of energy, not a lot of alertness in your mind.
What do you think about standing up?
Excellent idea. That's exactly what I would recommend. As I mentioned yesterday, just that little extra energy to hold your body up will sometimes balance the tranquility, and you'll have that sense of real calm presence. Thank you for the question.